Let me tell you about my dad, the greatest man I've ever known, and I feel so fortunate, so blessed to be his son and to call him my dad, my father. And this goes for my mom too. And as I put together this video, I've come to realize that my two biggest regrets in life are that, number one, I didn't honor my mother in this same way before she passed, because she most certainly deserved it too. And secondly, I regret with much humility that I haven't done more with my life to honor them both for all of the sacrifices, wisdom, and love they have so graciously bestowed upon me and the rest of our family. But hopefully they can be proud in knowing that the thanks, appreciation, gratitude, and love I am expressing in this video to honor them will reflect the love and life's lessons that we were raised and instilled with. And that because in the end, when we're ready to check out, what's most important is the love of family and relationships that matter most. And Mom and Dad, you only have to look around you to measure what you have created. Now about my dad. How do you go through life without pissing anyone off? He is the calmest, kindest, most thoughtful person I know. I've never heard anyone speak ill of him, and I've never seen him get angry with anyone. And the only person I've ever seen get mildly annoyed with him was my mom. Even Jesus had his detractors, but not my dad. I always marveled at his ability to diffuse conflict and anger with his charm and sense of humor. I'm convinced that's the recipe and his secret to longevity as he's going into his 92nd year now. The closest he ever came to punish me was when I was about 10 years old and I talked back and yelled at Mom. Bad enough for her to insist that he take me out to the garage to be disciplined with the belt. He marched me out there, took off his belt, folded it, and snapped it loudly about 5 or 6 times, and asked me if I was going to do that again. I started crying not because he hit me, because he didn't, but because I felt ashamed that I did something that would cause him to be upset with me. And as I look back, I honestly can't recall any of my brothers and sisters disrespecting Mom and Dad, and that they were able to command that respect without cursing, yelling, or resorting to beatings or violence, which is truly remarkable. Of course, that's not to say my siblings and I were perfect angels and that we didn't break some rules along the way. But we never got hit or cursed at, and the few times we did get in trouble for things we shouldn't be doing, they were there to bail us out, of course, not without consequences. I do remember one time where my mom raised her voice to him, and it caused all of us to freeze in our tracks. Dad has an uncanny way of tuning out the world. He had the ability to hold a transistor radio to one ear with one hand, hold and read the newspaper with the other hand, and watch the ball game on TV, all while my brother and I were wrestling in the living room breaking shit. My sisters were arguing loudly and fighting over Barbie or something, and my mom was in the kitchen making dinner. "Doe!" she shouted. That's what she called him. "Don't you see what they're doing?" In retrospect, I think that moment was the genesis for 2 major cultural phenomenons. Homer Simpson's trademark "Doe!" and the mannequin challenge, where everyone in the video freezes at the same time, because that's what happened the day my mom raised her voice to Dad. We all settled down, but my dad went back to his business, reading the newspaper, listening to the radio, and watching TV, unfettered and unperturbed. I believe she was the first one to ever say, "Doe!" I remember when he used to take me to baseball games as a kid. We would sit up in the cheap seats, then slowly migrate down to the best seats, and by the end of the game, we were sitting almost behind third base. I remember the first time walking into the Coliseum to watch the Rams play. The first time you walk into a stadium like that as a young boy, you never forget it. We would park at least a mile from the stadium and walk a dozen or so blocks to save on parking. We would buy peanuts and candy at a liquor store on the way because it was cheaper than buying it from the peanut vendor in the stadium. I was young enough to remember that he had to carry me in his arms back to the car because I would fall asleep. Can you picture him carrying me for a mile now? I remember him taking me to a USC basketball game. I vividly remember the smell of the crowd and the voice of basketballs pounding the court, the sensation of anticipation in the crowd and the audience pregame chatter arguing about which team or player was better. This is some of the stuff that you'd never forget. I remember him taking me to watch the Angels play in Wrigley Field, to the Ram and Dodger games at the Coliseum and Chavez Ravine, and how inning by inning we would gradually sneak down to the better seats as the game went on, and by the 8th or ninth inning we were almost behind third base. He was a master at it. I cherished our trips to the barber college where first-time students got to practice cutting hair and it only cost $0.25. I didn't go for the haircuts, but the real lure was Ye Old Bookstore across the street, a place where they sold used books and comics. They had a whole aisle dedicated to used comic books, which were a few dozen boxes of unsorted random comics ranging from Superman, Batman and Robin, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Green Lantern, Justice League of America, Archie, Nancy, and Little Lulu, and so on. I remember the owner resembled Yoda, and I'm sure he stood on a box which made him tall enough to conduct business over an average counter. He wore Coke bottle bottom glasses, and he had to hold books an inch from his face in order to read them. These are the kind of things you remember as a child, and the memories you have to share with your dad when you're young. He charged $0.05 apiece, and there was a return policy where he would buy them back 3 for a dime. My dad would typically let me have $0.25, which bought 5 comic books, plus the ones I got in exchange. Around the corner was Thrifty Drugstore where they sold ice cream cones for $0.05. Sometimes Dad would even swing for 2 scoops. I remember one time as we were walking out after a haircut, my dad spotted $0.25 someone had dropped through the grating of a tree planted in the sidewalks. I'll let him tell the story.
They had a fur shop, they stored these furs in there.
Oh.
And women used to drive in with their Cadillacs and Mercedes, and they'd come in all fancy, and they'd come out wearing their furs, and so that's kind of, and next door to it was a barber college where Leonard get a haircut for $0.25. So we seen that quarter down in the drain. And I said, well, I know how to get that out. So everybody's trying to get it to a bunch of kids. So I finally got it like a broomstick, and I got a bunch of chewing gum, and I stuck it on the end of it, and I was trying to get it out. It wouldn't stick. And that lady comes around, she says, what are you doing there? I says, oh, she says, there's $0.25, and we're trying to get it out. Is that all the hell is, you guys? She says, here, she gave us 50 cents or something. She says, leave that $0.25 in there. So she gave us 50 cents, and I kept $0.25, and I gave Leonard $0.25 or something. And after everybody gone, I went and got the thing, and I put $0.25 on it.
Now that Mom has passed, he has extra time to spend on calling 800 numbers and getting refunds on products promising money-back guarantees. Who do you know that likes to engage telemarketers when they call? He will talk to them about everything except what they are trying to sell him. He will ask them if they have a dog. He'll ask them if they know Jesus. Sometimes he will pretend that he only speaks Spanish, and when they answer him in Spanish, he will speak to them in English. Telemarketers hang up on him. In the hallway, we have 4 generations of family pictures: grandparents, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, grandchildren. And in the middle of all these pictures of relatives spanning 4 generations is a picture of a black family of farmers posing for a picture in the middle of a field of cotton that he picked up at a garage sale. He says it's a conversation piece, and you can imagine the look on people's faces as they're perusing the gallery of family pictures. Here's a picture of him posing as a Mexican gangster. We call him the Veterano. Even though we buy him new clothes for his birthday, Father's Day, Christmas, and every chance we get, he never wears them. And when we take him out for dinner, here's what he likes to wear: a threadbare, moth-eaten sweater held together with a safety pin. I think he likes to embarrass us. He's the only person on the block with a toilet bowl as a flower planter. There was the time he bought a gaudy costume jewelry ring the size of a pocket watch and wore it everywhere he went, to the store, to the neighbor's house, and especially to family functions. And if you failed to mention the ring, he would suddenly feel the need to inauspiciously scratch his forehead with his ring finger, and do it with a perfectly straight face, and keep scratching until you mention the ring. I wonder whatever happened to it. I think Mom might have gotten rid of it. These are only a few of the cherished memories I have of Dad. And Dad, if you watch this, I know you will, I want you to know how much you are loved, how many lives you have touched, and what an incredible contribution you have made to so many lives. I love you, Dad.